Um, all right. Yeah, I think we've allowed some people to show up, and we could probably just get going. So let's kick it off. We are doing a live AMA with Eric Amodio. He is the CTO of GitKraken and the creator of GitLens. And if you have any questions, feel free to chime in chat whenever they come up, and we'll try and get to them as we go through. But Eric, maybe introduce yourself, or let me introduce myself first. I'm Chris Griffing. I'm our developer advocate at GitKraken, and I will be mediating and hosting with Eric. But Eric is the star of the show today. So Eric, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I'm Eric Amodio. I'm the CTO at GitKraken. Yeah, created GitLens many years ago. Yeah, and the more questions you ask, the less you're going to hear me ramble about random stuff. So,
right,
ask away.
So, like, how long ago did you create GitLens, and were you working at Microsoft when you did that?
No, this was before I worked at Microsoft. It was probably, I don't even know, 2016. Okay. Around there. So eight years ago, a little more. Yeah, I think it'll be 9 years in June. Okay. So long time ago. Yeah, and then I was at Microsoft right before I joined GitKraken. So that was, I was there 5 years ago. So I was there for 2 years, and then I've been at GitKraken for just over 3. So.
And what teams were you on while you worked at Microsoft?
If I was on the VS Code team. Yeah, I owned the Git extension. I worked on the timeline view, and then after that, it was working a little bit with the Copilot team at the end while that was getting incubated, and then the big thing that I really wanted to bring to light was, which is why I actually joined Microsoft in the first place, was to take a prototype I had built, another extension called Remote Hub, which allowed you to virtually work on Git repository, GitHub repositories. And so that ultimately became VS Code Dev and GitHub Dev.
Cool.
So that's the remote repositories extensions through that. So got to bring that to light. So that was, a lot of fun.
So they basically hired you because you had built GitLens and already were an expert in the ecosystem then, huh?
Yeah, I'd worked with the team prior just on pushing them on features and stuff like that. And GitLens, even at that point, was one of the top extensions. If it wasn't a Microsoft extension, I think I was the top at that point. Okay. So, it's been a great run. It's been kind of honestly insane. It just started. I build lots of tools just for myself, and that's where GitLens started for me. And the teams that I was working with, and helping them transition to Git. And one of the big things that not only just making Git easier, but one of the things that I really wanted to do is, I constantly dive through history of a code base to understand how the code became this way when I'm debugging, like what happened, what's different than before, like that sort of stuff. So I really wanted to sort of take this unlock the power and knowledge that the code base already has, and bring that and make that accessible. So that was like the core ethos that started it, and still something that is a passion of mine to continue giving more context.
Yep. Yeah, before I even started at GitKraken, I'd had GitLens installed since basically I started using VS Code. I think they recommended it, and then on every new machine I might install VS Code and forget to install GitLens, and just, where's my gutter highlights? Where's all this other stuff, So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, one of the things that's crazy is, like GitLens is sort of well known for the inline blame and some of the annotations and stuff like that. But, it's also grown a lot and has, a lot of features that, can, help you at many different stages through your workflow. And, one of the things that we try to do, the ethos that I've brought to the project from the beginning is to try to keep performance and what you're doing, top of mind. So, like trying to keep our bundle sizes small. Like we always have iterations of, trying to make sure that, do we need these dependencies? Are we doing this in the right way? Can we code split stuff out so it only even gets loaded when you actually use that feature? So we spend a lot of time, really designing it for pay for play. So meaning that if you don't use that feature, we don't even load it off disk. It's not even in memory.
Nice.
And that sort of stuff. So there's a lot that we try to, to continually, keep that ethos going and try to keep it as lightweight. I mean, we're in the IDE where you're working, so I want to keep it as lightweight as possible.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. We do have a question from a user, and I think this kind of like ties into some of the stuff you might want to show us. Basically, are there any lesser known GitLens settings that can significantly improve the user experience?
Yeah, from settings point of view, I mean, I like one thing too that we're hoping to do in some point, and we'll probably put up some some polls on on GitHub and whatnot for the community to chime in, is to like pull what settings people have on and what settings they want by default, because it's been a very long time since we sort of like changed defaults. And so yeah, there's a lot of different settings there. I can sort of share and we can talk through some of them.
Sure.
Let's see.
And yeah, we got some questions. We'll try and get to the questions maybe after a little bit of this showcase. And yeah, I really like that question from Kevin Bost about when this became a viable business, and I think we can dig into more of that in a bit.
Yeah, we can talk about that in a minute here.
Yep.
One thing first is just GitLens has sort of a rich settings editor. You can use sort of VS Codes to get access to all the settings. GitLens has lots of them, but some of the things that are very top of mind. I mean, the easily to configure is whether the inline blame shows up. But one thing is the code lens that we show with the author information. I typically turn it on all the scopes. I think by default we have it very limited, so it doesn't sort of clutter a lot of things. But personally, I like to see it in lots of places, so I'll turn on block scope. I also like to be able to click on that and show changes from commits, and I'll show you what that looks like. But you can control and select many different options for what happens when you interact with some of these things. So yeah, there's some good configurations in here. When we talk about annotations, especially like the heat map, I usually turn off some of the line highlights and I just use the fading. I honestly can't remember exactly what the defaults are, but and you can actually control how for the heat map what you consider old is, because some code bases you want to consider old very not too new, very recent, and others are like 90 days is way too recent to consider old, and you can move that out. So I'll show some of that in here now. So like I was mentioning, we were looking at some of the annotations. So you can, on an editor, open the, sort of GitLens menu here, and you can turn on the file blame. Lots of people have used this, with the gutter. They're familiar with that on GitHub and other tools. But we also you can turn on just the heat map, and with the fade, it makes it pretty easy to see, which code has gotten access more recently. You can see it both on the scroll bar, and you can control whether you want it on the scroll bar or the gutter. And then the most interesting one that is I use fairly often, but is the sort of changes. And so by default, if you just turn on the changes, we kind of figure out whether you have working changes or stage changes, or just what was the most recent commit on this file, and highlight the changes in that file. So you can sort of just see these were the lines, blue is the modified, green is new, just sort of like the standard gutter, and so I can see those changes right here. But you can also get more in depth if you actually want to look at with the code lens, like I have it configured. So if I click this, it will go and highlight. Why is it not now? Of course,
the demo gods.
Of course, the demo gods are having fun with me right now. But yeah, so you can click that, and then basically the commit from 4 weeks ago, it will highlight all the changes.
That's nice.
Related to that commit. So it's a easier way to go through and dive down to see where those that changes are, what happened in that commit. You can also. Sorry?
I don't think I've ever clicked that. So yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. I mean, you can also, and I'll show, we eventually will dive into some of the other views, but you can also on a particular commit, you can say, is it, where is the highlight? Thought it was in here. I must be misremembering or something, but there was a highlight of the I'm sorry, it's in a particular file. You have to do it, but because it could only highlight on the file. But you can go into the file history and say highlight the changes in the file, and it jumps right into that as well. So
cool.
Did we have any other questions that we wanted to hit on first before I continue?
I think we're good there. Let me just double check some of the ones that we might have had before. What are some of the big differences actually between GitLens Community and GitLens Pro?
Yeah, so there's quite a difference between them, as we've continued on. But GitLens Community has a wide array of features. Everything I've already sort of shown here is all in the community. The blame, the annotations, a lot of features set through there. Really Pro gives you some of these more advanced features, sort of like, extra work tree management on top and being able to easily switch between them, bringing in integrations to, look at PRs and issues across the product, the graph and others. I mean, both the graph and work trees, you also get for free on public repositories. But, there's other features are like our cloud-backed stuff as well. So, any of the cloud-backed features, some are still in preview, so they're accessible to everyone. But, they will continue, in that pro vein. But yeah, there's a lot we continually add into the community, cool, as well as, sort of continuing to expand the pro offering as well.
Okay, cool.
It's not unfortunately, it's not a super easy answer because there's a lot of functionality that, existed before GitKraken, and we've added a lot to community even past that. And so everything that was available before still is, and a whole lot of new stuff. And then, we've been adding sort of, more advanced pro features on top.
Okay, so this almost kind of ties into Kevin's question. At what point did we realize GitLens could be a viable business solution rather than a hobby project? And really, it's like those team kind of focused cloud features, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's it's sort of like we're in the space where tens of millions of developers are working on, and we feel strongly that we can provide enhanced workflows and experiences to how you code, how you get work done, and that sort of stuff. And so we're just trying to balance out, try to give away and try to offer as much as we can while still trying to build a sustainability and to practice it on top of it. I mean, I think one of the things as a hobby project, it's very hard when you have you're one person and you have tens of millions of devs using it and asking lots of questions and ask for features and bugs and all that sort of stuff. So, there's a lot that goes into just maintaining and continuing to expand the core feature set that everyone gets access to.
Right.
And then, sort of trying to augment that for, the, more professional developers and teams that, can help, create a sustainable model.
Yeah, sounds good. Cool. And yeah, feel free. Show us some more of the cool features that you had planned.
Sure. All right. I'm just it's a little hard on the tiny screen here, but hopefully you can see some of it. So one thing in the more recent versions of GitLens, we sort of consolidated a lot of our different views. We, like our commits view and branches and remotes and, sort of all these things into sort of one consolidated view to make it a little bit easier to manage. So you don't have to play with VS Code views as much. So, we've sort of introduced this tab bar on the GitLens view, that will show up in the, source control sidebar by default. And you can just, click on them to tab through. If you click on the selected icon again, you'll get a sub menu of all the actions that you can do on that view. And then, if there's views that you specifically, don't want grouped in here, you could detach, so like if I use the commits view all the time and I want two of them, I can just detach that view.
And that used to be the default, right? And this is something that we've recently changed. Okay, cool.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, if we detach all the views, we can kind of go back to what was before.
Right.
And you got, commits. And so, there's a lot of stuff that you have to go and sort of manage and play around with. So yeah, this is to make it, easier.
A way to save some of that vertical real estate, right?
Exactly. And you can still decide which ones you want. So you can group up just some of them, and you can go through and close them down, or use the sort of menus here to detach or regroup them.
Cool.
So yeah, that's one thing to notice in here. And yes, there's the main, commits, branches, remotes, stashes, tags. One of the things we actually did recently too, which is there's a little bit of a hidden feature, but you can turn on in here, is that you can show stashes. I think it's off by default, but you can show stashes in the commits view. So if there's stashes that show up in the commit history of the current branch you're on, you can see that without having to switch to the stashes view. So awesome. It sort of unifies that. Another sort of little hidden feature too is on the branches view, you can actually turn on remote branches. So you don't have to switch to the remotes view if you want to see all the remote branches that are tied to sort of like that, your default remote. So like, origin or, whatever you set in GitLens. So in GitLens, you can go and, set a remote as default. So if you only have one, you're going to get that one. But if you have multiple, you'll have to pick which one you want your default remote to be. And then, you can turn, you can turn that. Oh, did I detach them all? All right, regroup all. Yeah, you can choose to show all the remote branches. So that way I can just sort of manage that right from here, and not, can see the mix of both my local and remotes all in one view, if that's what you want.
Okay.
We cool. Also have the power, work trees. Work trees, if people aren't familiar with Git work trees, they basically allow you to have 2 working trees checked out at the same time, or any number of them, so you can sort of work on multiple branches or multiple things in parallel. So this is a feature that I use very heavily. You can see I have a lot of work trees. Okay. But so like these are sort of like different either experiments or different things I'm working on, or things I'm playing with in parallel. So I could have one VS Code window that's working on a feature branch. It can be debugging, doing anything else. Someone can ping me on my team and ask me to look at something. I can just open that thing on a new work tree, go back to, completely different VS Code window, leaving my debugging session on the breakpoint where it's there, not touching anything. Okay. Open the new window and diving through that. So, so we make that very easy to get into the work trees, create them.
So work tree is almost like a separate cloned folder, but it abstracts some of that stuff away from you, right?
Yeah. It's like having another clone, except you sort of share all the Git stuff. So you save a bunch of disk space because like all the Git parts are completely shared, but you just get 2 working directories. So you can work on things in not 2, any number of working directories.
That's very cool. Okay, awesome.
So that one is a very, very powerful one in here. Did we have any other questions, or I will jump to home?
We had one quick question, and this is more of a general question. So how do you see Git integrations evolving inside VS Code? And my guess, and feel free to correct me, Cosmic Cognizance, my guess is they're asking, like, how do you see like other Git integrations kind of like competing and evolving along with the ecosystem that we're in?
So when you say Git integrations, are we talking about other code hosts or like issue integrations, or what level of?
Yeah, I'm not sure. So Cosmic, feel free to clarify what you meant by that. But how do you see like GitLens kind of like carving a niche that like other integrations just won't touch? Like what is really like our moat in GitLens?
Yeah. So I mean,
I'm curious about it, at least.
Yeah, I think one thing that we're really trying to lead into, which actually dovetails kind of perfectly into this next area, is what we've done recently for home. And so if you looked at home in prior versions of GitLens, but prior to October, please take another look because prior it was more of just like a welcome and here's how to jump off to get features. Now we've sort of completely and utterly redesigned it to like be very useful, and we're continuing putting a lot more features into here, but like really trying to help you manage your work and follow that through the workflow. So I mean, I think this is one area where we're trying to spend a lot of time is really, prior, like GitLens was, sort of a collection of tools, and let you do some advanced things. Here, we're really trying to put together, workflows that you can go through. And, some will be somewhat opinionated. We're still going to give you the tools to go and change that. But really, like, we want to guide, have an end-to-end experience. So like you can start work on an issue, pick it directly from your issue tracker that you have set up, create a branch or work tree to get working on it, follow that through, if you didn't start with an issue, allowing you to associate an issue to the, what you're working on, create that PR when you're ready to publish, once that branch is published, like really having a set of guided actions that sort of like are there for whatever the next step is.
Cool.
So that's something we're, spending a lot more time on. It's just, following the work through from, prior to start to the end. And we're also looking at how we can layer AI and other features to help that experience in very explicit parts. Like if you're, getting here and starting work on an issue, let's give you a summary of that issue, so you can look at that right here. You don't have to go out to Jira or GitHub or wherever and sort of pull context in. So try to bring that together, get you started on that. So that's where we're spending a lot of our time and energy these days, is really around workflows.
Okay, cool. Yeah, looks like that's it for questions. If there's something else you want to show us, yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so I mentioned we're really trying to do the workflows on here. So, one of the strong points of GitLens is to, connect your integration. So like get connected to your Git host, get connected to your issue tracker, so that we can sort of light up a lot more interactions through that. So, you can get started there. Then we're going to, show you the repo you're on and in the current branch, what status you currently have. So, I've got sort of working changes in here, but I can also see that, this feature branch that I'm working on has this warning. And so I have these potential conflicts with the merge target. And like the concept of the merge target is like, this feature branch is likely to be merged into some main branch, some other branch. Right. And so we'll try to do detection to figure out where's the most likely place that this will get merged into. In the future, we will actually let you, if we get it wrong, you could actually change it. But, we do a lot of detection to go and figure out to see like, where is this likely to get merged to? And then we'll do a simulated merge to that branch that you're merged to and tell you whether or not you have conflicts, or maybe you don't have conflicts, but you're just behind. So we'll give you actions to go and sort of rebase that or merge that. So in this one, I actually if I were to merge this branch into origin main, not only am I 111 commits behind, but it would also it will also result in a conflict.
Right.
And we're still expanding this right now. You can't click on these files. That's something we'll be adding and expanding the experience here of like what this would look like. But you can see, I have, conflicts in these files if I were to continue and rebase this in. So this is something we're going to continually expand more. You can also just, fetch again, because maybe you haven't fetched recently and you want to make sure on here, but you could also open up a comparison. So this is another powerful feature of GitLens. That actually, there's a lot going on in this view, so I'm just going to move it back to this one. So it opened this comparison here. Did not open what I expected it to open. Let me just try one more time. All right, well, I don't know why that opened this one. So great, another bug. Anyway, so effectively it can do the same thing. I can come to the search and compare view, and then compare that merged actions with that origin main. and this is what it should have opened.
Okay, there we go.
But so like you can see, I'm behind 111 commits. These are all the commits. These are the files that I'm behind. I can go through and review them independently, or I can open up, a diff of all those files. I'm not going to click that because it's 647 files. It will take a while to generate that.
Right.
But here, like this one, 8 files, so I can open up the multi-diff editor and go through and review the changes in here.
Okay.
And then we also, one of the things with both integrations, when you have integrations connected, but you will even try to detect them, is that if there are any auto links that these commit messages have mentioned in there. So like we'll do detection, get general links, and if you have integrations, we'll actually go and resolve them. So like here, this issue has actually been closed, and you can get the title and when it was closed. So
Cool.
you can see here all the issues that have been closed in that time frame.
Instead of just having to jump out to Jira and like search for it yourself and have that.
Yeah, and this is like all the things that the commits are saying closed in here. You can actually copy, multi-select and copy them as Markdown. We're also in the coming pre-release. There will actually it's actually here. I forgot I was running the pre-release version. But
that could have been part of the bug that you had earlier, right?
Yeah, the new thing we're working on is the like generating a change log. So from all these changes, like I wouldn't normally do it from the behind, right? Because I don't really want to change log for what I'm old with. But like the changes between this comparison, I can just use AI to generate a change log and have that right there, copy all that right into my change log to make that much easier. And so we leverage not only what's in the commit messages, but what is in the auto links and other things that we found, and try to bring that context together and generate that for you.
Gotcha.
So that look for that. That's in the pre-release as of a couple days ago.
And all these AI features are opt-in, right? Like they're not on by default.
Yes.
Like a user has to turn it on. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
I mean, concerned about the security of that.
Yeah, I mean, well, they're opt out to sort of like turn them off, but they're opt in that like we'll never send data out until you authorize it. So like if I click this, right, I haven't picked a model yet. So like, you'll have to pick, what model I want to use.
Right.
So
there's several steps someone would have to take to actually.
And then, once I pick that model once, you're good. But then, you have to say, like, is it okay to send this off to? And so you can just hit continue.
Like that warning too. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, if you can hit continue, and it will be just this one time. And the next time you do it, you're going to get this warning again. You can go back and switch the model if you need to, or you can say just like, hey, for this workspace, I don't care. Don't ask me again. Mm-hmm. Or you can just say, always don't ask me again.
Sure.
And that sort of thing. So you can sort of, and if you cancel out, we haven't sent any data or done anything. So pretty much all the AI features for generating the commit messages, generating the change log, generating stash messages, doing explanations, all follow that same pattern. Very
cool. We did have a quick question. What makes GitLens better than tools like GitLens or SourceGraph? And really, like, it's almost like you want to pick one to compare against because they do different things slightly. Are you familiar with GitLens?
Yeah, I mean, that's just a fork of GitLens from before. So.
Oh, okay. So GitLens is basically just the one without our cloud features and stuff. Right?
Yeah, it's one from 3.5 years ago.
Okay.
And so, GitLens is far better than GitLens. Even if you never get an account, never do pro, never do anything there, GitLens has improved very significantly since that point.
Right. Even the community edition without the paid stuff has been getting iterated upon. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah,
very significant.
GitLens is like a snapshot in time.
Yep.
Okay. Cool.
And what was the other one?
SourceGraph. I'm less familiar with SourceGraph's functionality.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not exactly sure what functionality they're mentioning. I mean, SourceGraph is much more of a search, engine, as well as their Cody extension is really about an AI extension.
Right.
So GitLens and SourceGraph don't sort of.
So maybe if you were like searching the commit graph in GitLens, that would be somewhat what SourceGraph is doing a little.
Typically, they don't go back in history. It's really about sort of like that point in time.
Gotcha.
But
okay.
yeah. But while you did mention, searching on the commit graph.
Yeah, that was a good segue, actually. It's
Yeah,
almost like I planned it. I didn't know.
That is one powerful feature. Personally, I'm not a huge graph power user.
Okay.
I use I built the other, GitLens views that sort of follow my workflow for the commits view. But one thing that has converted me over, GitLens has had powerful search features, but, actually just being able to search for things in here, it sort of takes the cake. So a couple things to notice in here, there's this, it's off by default. So there's filter commits. So if you toggle that on, basically anything you search for the only things in the graph that will show up will be matches. If it's off, you'll see still all the commits, but the ones that don't match will be just dimmed out. So depending on what mode you want to work in, I usually like them filtered. And then here, we've got this, and we'll be looking to improve this experience to make it easier to filter and type in here. But these are like sort of the categories of things you can type for, look for. One of the things that's, very powerful search is looking for a particular change. So if you wanted to know hey, when did some function change, or when did, when was the graph, anything mentioning graph introduced in GitLens? And so in here, we can, go and see both on the sort of the mini map. The mini map starts from, now to, the sort of the history of the repository, of what's currently loaded. So as you scroll, we'll scroll in more data. But this is what the graphs is currently loading. And you can see before, this time we didn't mention, in the graph, and the dates seem a little weird, but, but you can do really powerful searching through that and then dive through and, see the changes in that. So that's been a very, very powerful feature for, searching through history and trying to find that. One of the things we're also trying to experiment with, we'll see if we can get it to work reliably, is allowing you to type natural language in here, and then, convert that into a Git query. So you can sort of, you don't have to type this. The other thing is you can also do compound queries. So I can also just, search for only things that were mentioned to me, that I authored, and have, a message of removes. And so you can sort of really have more and more complex queries on that.
Very cool. Awesome.
Some other little things while we're on the graph, like I mentioned, the mini map is sort of like this timeline scrubber view. You can click on any point in there. You can see where, bigger changes came into the repository, around that time frame. But you can also control what things we show, the little markers on here. So if you don't want, to see a lot of stuff, you just want to see where the local branches are, or you just maybe want to just see where tags are, because those are where, the way GitLens uses tags is where releases happened. So you can sort of, jump to, particular releases and, see that here. Similarly, you have the sort of the same control on the scroll bar. You can toggle the scroll markers and toggle on and off which ones you want. So, if I didn't want to show the local branches, I can just see where the tags are, or if I didn't want to show where the PRs were, I can just see, tags and that sort of stuff.
Okay, awesome. We did have a question prior to this on GitHub. Let me find it real quick. Given our integration with Jira in GitLens 15, are there plans to expand this functionality to other popular project management tools? If so, which platforms are we considering, and how important do we think it is to implement seamless connections between commits and user stories or tasks across a wider range of project management systems to meet the diverse needs of development teams?
Yeah, so I think integrations are very important to where we're going, and where we're continuing to lean in to sort of bring more context together, so that you have more stuff at your fingertips that you don't have to switch to different tools to get, and also to bring that together. And if you want to feed that to an AI to get better outcomes, to that sort of thing, we're trying to bring that together as well. So yeah, we're continually expanding the integration support that we have. We recently added the enterprise versions for GitHub and GitLab. In the last release, we added Azure DevOps. In the release that's coming up, we're adding Bitbucket. For the issue tracking side, Trello is one that's might be close on the list next, because technically, so one thing we have to just picture is that, these integrations also integrate with the GitKraken's backend. And so it's what integrations that sort of we support across our ecosystem of the GitKraken CLI, the GitKraken desktop, and GitKraken dev, which is the browser based. So we have support for Trello in some of those products already, so we may bring that one in. But we've definitely heard interest in Linear across our platform.
Okay.
But if there are other ones that people are using, Git is another one that we've also heard a lot. So Git and Linear are definitely top of mind for us. We don't have any ETA or a plan to bring them out, in any near term. But we're always listening. So if there's a good user base or you have very specific workflows, I mean, we know what the values are of that. It's just basically speccing and getting the work together.
Sure.
But yeah, those are things that we will be continuing adding and expanding that support.
Gotcha. And if people want to suggest things or see if it's been suggested, they can go to feedback.gitkraken.com, right?
Yep. They can go for that for the, that's mainly for the GitKraken desktop product.
Okay.
For GitLens, you can go, into the GitHub discussions, or open an issue. But yeah, you can go directly to the GitHub discussions on our repo. And yeah.
And that is one of the things that really does separate this from some of the other products we have. GitLens is still open source, right? Like people can still just go to the GitHub repo and interact with it in a way that, as if it was just some other open source project too. They can just make it their own. They can add suggestions and everything. It's cool.
Yeah, and we try to do more things too, and we're getting better. We still have a long way to go, but posting more things on GitHub discussions to ask for different feedback or early designs that we're working on to get the community more involved earlier. So yeah, definitely check out the GitHub discussions, and even just follow the work on the GitHub issues.
Cool. And I mean, even if someone wants to help contribute, it is an open source project. If they see some issue that they think they could help solve, or something like that, they can always do that too.
Absolutely.
Cool. Were there any other major features, like things that you think people might not be aware of, like little tips and tricks that you wanted to show us?
I mean, I can continue all day here, but yeah, I mean, I think Launchpad is another. I mean, this is not that hidden, but Launchpad is another feature that I use quite regularly. Basically, the concept behind Launchpad is to you're working on a team, you have PRs that need something. Like, so your teammates need something from you, or you need something from your teammates, that sort of stuff. So we sort of quickly here summarize that you have stuff that there's actually 13 PRs that need my review that are sitting out there. So I can click on that. We can come into the Launchpad view, and I can go through and see the different categories of things. And so yeah, I can come right in here. And if I wanted to go and review this, I could jump right to GitHub, or I can just click the open work tree, and then just that one click will open a brand new VS Code window with the diff of the PR and that sort of stuff. So it's try to give you a very smooth workflow for getting in, don't disrupting what you have, open a brand new work tree, get there, and you can start reviewing right from there. So yeah, this is something I use quite a lot to sort of manage the work trees, and something shows up, it's like, oh, okay, I got to open that in a work tree, do that, and I'm done with it, nuke it, and continue on.
Very awesome.
I mean, the other, let me just open up a file here. We have the GitLens inspect view as well. At this small size, it's a little hard to see. But yeah, so as you're navigating around, just sort of like the inline blame, it can give you context and history, where your cursor is on the, on that. And so, anything in here, you can go through and see the changes in that commit. We can actually, use AI again to explain the changes, what was in that commit. File history will give you sort of like stages of the current file. You can jump through and just, open diffs for that. And the, visual file history just gives you sort of like a sort of swim lane timeline-esque view. So we can see, people are different contributors, who's contributed to this file last. And then, the size of the bubbles or how large the contribution is. You can see the added and deleted. And you can sort of filter through that and change the timeline or zoom into a specific area.
Awesome.
So that's been changed. One thing I will mention very quickly is the graph. You can actually, it's anchored down here in the sort of the bottom panel of VS Code, but you can also open it in an editor.
Just to like make it a bit bigger and, get more real estate to.
Yeah. And you can also open multiple. So if you had different repos, you can switch between them and that sort of, so you can look at two different things at the same time.
Sure.
You're not going to be able to see it on the screen share, but you can actually just drag the tab out of the VS Code window, and it will just open in a brand new VS Code window. And so you can just have your graph off on the side. Right now, the commit details doesn't come along with the graph. That's something that we are working on and should be coming in the next couple releases. But yeah, they'll all come together. So you can actually just sort of tear off the graph into a different window and have your code one in a different window on the side. Kind of like, the Gitkraken desktop or something like that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that would be great for people that have those really wide monitors, right?
Yeah.
They just got like all that extra space. Okay, cool.
Exactly. And you can kind of do this, similar thing for the visual file history. If you want to like dive into the file history of a particular file or open a multiples of that, you can open them as editor tabs as well.
Okay. We are getting close to time, so it's looking like we might want to do another one of these at some point. I think this went really well. But let's at least get to a couple of the questions that people had asked, and we can wrap up with those. So one person says, I haven't used GitLens in a while. Might need to jump back in. Does GitLens work with Windsurf?
GitLens does work with Windsurf. We work with pretty much any VS Code based editor. So, Cursor, Windsurf, Tray, AIDE, Theo, or sort of Thea is a little bit, it's not as VS Code based. It's like based before. And so they've changed, they haven't kept up. So parts of GitLens work fine. Other parts don't work that great. But the ones that are these more modern forks are kept up to date better. GitLens works very well within the modern ones. The only issues with some of them was the rebase editor didn't always work because we couldn't find the executable, but that we fixed that in the last release that just went out. So now it should all the features of GitLens should basically work, in all of those. It's a little bit of, it all really depends on what they do. Like Cursor, for example, doesn't support VS Code's walkthroughs. So GitLens walkthrough will not work in Cursor because they didn't include that functionality in their fork. So that one we can't control. But that's the only thing that we've noticed across the board, so far. So, and there's a lot of cloud IDEs that it works with as well. So, it will work in Gitpod. It will work in Code Sandbox. It works in VS Code Dev. It works in GitHub Dev. It works in Code Spaces. So there's a lot of places that you can leverage GitLens.
Awesome. Let's see. Okay, so our handler, someone behind the scenes, is reminding us that we are looking for people to maybe do a survey for us, and like in that survey, you can volunteer yourself, and we will then reach out to a select few people, and you'll get a gift card for your time for helping us like go through this this next step after the form that they just pasted in chat there. And I think there was one other question that we had from like before we started. Daheen on Reddit asked, what would be your recommendations or advice for those starting out or who want to start out in software development?
I mean, I think the thing for me, with the, being in the age of AI, you really have to think of, where the value will continue going forward. And so, yes, over time, the code monkey aspect, or, deep down writing code, it's fairly likely, or at least in my view, that will go away at some point, and go away is different, right? Like, it's like, like generally we don't write assembly anymore, right? That
Sure.
It didn't go away. Some people still do, but most don't.
Right.
And it's sort of like the same thing. The languages, the way we write in code today, it won't go away, but it will change very significantly. We'll be at a different layer of abstraction.
Sure.
I just think of this as more like, we're just going through like the compiler phases and these sort of things. In higher level languages, it's just going to keep going up. But one thing that's really important and, is really being able to solve problems and think of how you could connect and impact your users and what you're trying to do. Because it doesn't matter, if the code is getting written by something else or, how that's happening. Something is going to be saying what needs to get done and how you interact with the product and how you make this stuff happen and like what the experience will really look like and be in new and innovative ways. So I think, sort of being that sort of product engineer, somebody who really is understanding the user, paying attention to that sort of thing is where you'll have the most success. And then being able to tie that down through the layers. Sure. Another thing too, right? Like, is, early starting out is just making sure you sort of can understand some of the layers of hierarchy. Like one thing I always find valuable is just being able to understand where the abstractions are below. So when they leak, when they break, you have some level of understanding of what's below it. And, some of the time, I mean, like writing code is just like, if you understand how things get optimized, you can write code much better to make that happen and be more performant or just understand those concepts. But, I think really tying it to being the products to the users and how to solve problems is really the key.
Okay. So yeah, like just to sum it up, so I understand, right? Number one, be curious, keep trying like the new things, adapt your workflow as like tech changes in general. And number two, just really try and focus on what your users are trying to do, right? How to make their experience just better.
Yeah, it's like what whatever you're trying to tackle, it just really just understand how they use it, how they want to use it, what problems you're trying to solve, and trying to just continually improve that. Which, speaking of which, is a call out I want to have to the community as well. Is like, please just get involved, open issues, open discussions. Like, upvote things, like help us really sort of refine the experience. We know there are challenges with, so many different parts of GitLens and, being a tool that does lots of things. There's just lots of, places that are out there, and we're trying to tie them together and bring them together. So the more that we hear, the more that we can talk to users, the more that we sort of hear from you of, what workflows, what are the challenges, what do you wish it did? And sort of like connect these flows, we'll be able to deliver a much better experience. So, yeah.
Awesome. I love that.
To hear more.
Yeah, that's probably a great note to like wrap things up on. But yeah, seriously, it's an open product and we need your feedback if there's things that you think could be better. So thank you all for joining us today. Eric, thank you for hopping on this AMA with me, and I hope you enjoyed it too.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chris. This was great.
Yeah,
good talking to you.
Yep. So cheers. We'll say adieu, and we'll maybe do another one of these at one point in the future. So later.